to earn more money but too busy to start a side hustle? Do it the right way and teach your money to make more money for yourself, even when you're asleep. Dale Corpus will show you just how here on the School of Cash Flow. With his entrepreneurial mindset and extensive experience in real estate and finance, Dale will help you become a responsible, strategic, and passionate passive real estate investor. Learn how you can increase your earnings or find more ways to make money, only here on the School of Cash Flow.
Good afternoon and welcome to the School of Cash Flow podcast. I'm the host, Dale Corpus. So I've been doing more networking later with more GoBundance members. As you guys know, I've been a member of GoBundance since December 2020. So we call each other Go Bros. And recently I was connected by a common colleague named Gary to my guest for today. It wasn't even a talk about real estate. We were talking about virtual assistants. Quick side note, if I haven't mentioned it before, one of my auxiliary businesses that has helped me scale up my real estate sales business has been the use of virtual assistants from the Philippines. And now I picked up the skill to help other entrepreneurs place them with full-time virtual assistants as well. And that's how Bernard Pierson from Equity Partners and I connected initially. And it was only through my initial conversation with him that I learned that he was a syndicator in the multifamily space. So I wanted to bring him on as a guest to learn more about his real estate business and what he's got going on, et cetera. And I find it really interesting that he's done both real estate in Latin America and the United States. Here's a little bit more info about Bernard as well. He's had over 10 years of real estate experience in international real estate and finance, and has recently focused primarily on multifamily assets. He's been in general partnerships in management, totaling 500 plus units, over 10 plus assets, and has also participated in the acquisition of 1,500 plus units across 20 plus properties with limited partnership interests. And he previously specialized in ground up development and has led development of over 100,000 usable square feet of condo buildings and single family home communities, in addition to the related development of land and infrastructure. During his free time, he enjoys traveling and spending time with his family. He's an avid golfer, skier, and tennis player. So without further ado, welcome to the show, Bernard. How are you?
Good. How are you, Dale? Thanks for having me.
I'm great. I'm great. Thanks for connecting with me and jumping on with me. And so, for my audience that doesn't know you yet, where are you based out of geographically?
I live in Miami, Florida, which is where I was born, and I've lived here for about 10 years now.
Nice. I know you have I think. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think you also have two boys. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah, I have a 3-year-old and a 9-month-old almost.
Okay, all right. You have harder than me. So I have 2 boys as well, but mine are 7 and 11. They're much easier. And I'm just curious because we connected through GoBundance, and I wanted to just I don't know if I asked you, how did you even hear about GoBundance, and what has it even done for you so far, if anything?
So I heard about GoBundance probably the first time. I'm not even sure, to be honest, but it must have been
a podcast.
On a podcast. Yeah, exactly. That was I was about to say that. Maybe the Bigger Pockets podcast or some. It must have been the Bigger Pockets podcast. And I started inquiring. I had already joined other networking groups, more real estate specific, and I had inquired and I liked it and joined. It's done great for me. I've met partners there. I've met great friends. The networking is amazing, not just on the business side, but also on the personal side. There's just a lot of, I feel like now I have access to the whole country, a community that's all over the country, whereas before, that was not the case. So it's just amazing. It's cool. I love it.
Yep. When I joined, I realized there was at first I thought there was nobody else that was just that thought weird like me, just different. But now it's just wow, everybody's like me. So it's just, I feel less alone. Hey, were you at Park City?
It's very lonely being an entrepreneur, right? So which I've been an entrepreneur most of my life. So just being part of that group has definitely fills that void.
Yeah, were you at Park City by chance? I was there.
Yes.
Yeah, I got it. I didn't get the chance to meet you, but hopefully I get to meet you at a future GoBundance event. But like, hey, let's jumping back into you and your story. So just tell me more about yourself. Elaborate more on your bio and what your main focus is right now.
Right. So I was born in Miami because when I was born, my parents were living here. I'm originally from Nicaragua in Central America. Or my family is, at least. I'm American, Nicaraguan. I have both nationalities. And so when I was born, my family was living here. They had fled a war, right? There was a civil war in my country, and they were living here during that time. And when I was 6 years old, they moved back to Nicaragua. So I grew up there. Moved back to the U.S. when I was 18 to go to school, to college. I went to college in D.C. and I probably never really went back full time to Nicaragua after that, except so when I want to say about 10 years ago, I started getting involved in real estate. First, I started investing passively as an LP in many multifamily deals. Not just multifamily. I did all sorts of commercial real estate, multifamily, industrial, self-storage. But my focus was always multifamily. I always liked that sector better than the rest, or most, not better. But at the same time, I had an opportunity. I met some guys that became my partners in development in Latin America. So I got involved in real estate development in Latin America, Nicaragua and Costa Rica specifically. So I would travel. I was living in Miami, but I would travel every week to Nicaragua. It's a 2-hour flight from Miami, so it's not bad. And when you get back in, you have the global entry and everything, so it's not bad. Mm-hmm. And I would go weekly, Monday through Friday. Occasionally, I would go to Costa Rica like once a month, and 3 or 4 times a month I would go to Nicaragua. And that's where I did most of the development work, and I did that for about 6 years. And it's been 4 to 5 years where I've been full-time multifamily investing and syndicating. So I'm a multifamily operator and syndicator.
Okay, got it. So like when you were doing all the developing over in Latin America, so remind me, what kind of property types were they? And what was that experience like?
Right. So it was strictly residential. It was all for sale, condos and single family homes. So we built communities and condo buildings. Now, the market down there is a lot smaller, which is one of the reasons why I came or I transitioned to the US. I started realizing that my investments as an LP in different syndications and commercial real estate investments I had in the US, some were already active, were doing better than my developments in Latin America, at least financially, right? They were making more money and so I started looking into it, right? I started studying, why is this the case? I mean, there's a lot more work to development, and my conclusion became just that the risk-adjusted return of Latin America is inferior than the US. I mean, I did a lot of research, I looked into a lot of numbers, and I'm very analytical, and I try to look at data. Not that I'm a data analyst or anything like that, but I always try to look at data as much as I can. And I came to the conclusion that it just didn't make sense to now. With that said, there are opportunities in Latin America. I'm not saying they're not, right? But it's just a lot more straightforward here, and it's a lot more likely, and there's less risk in the US than there is in Latin America in general. Yeah. So that's kind of how it went.
For my knowledge, because I don't know much about real estate over there, I take it mortgage rates are like just mortgage guidelines. Mortgages are completely different out of there. I mean, is there a big discrepancy, in rates between U.S. mortgages and what you can get over in Nicaragua?
Yes, totally. So it's throughout Latin America, it's going to vary. Each country's going to have different rates or different mortgage programs or whatever. In general, you're not going to find Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac supporting mortgages, first of all. So you're not going to have that, I guess, downward pressure in interest rates generally, right? Yep. I mean, with that said, interest rates have gone up recently here in the US, but just the rates over there are just a lot higher in general. I mean, a 30-year mortgage to buy primary home in a country like Nicaragua is going to be 11, 12% annual interest rate. Probably higher right now. The interest rates have increased because if they increase here, they typically increase down there. And throughout Latin America, the countries with the lower interest rates are going to be somewhere between 8 to 9 in today's environment. I would assume.
No, very cool.
So yeah.
Going back to just you're getting involved, in real estate, just approximately the last 10 years. I mean, did it just was that something that you knew you wanted to do, or did it just kind of did it somehow find you, or how did that work?
So it somehow found me. So when I first got involved in real estate, which was again about 10 years ago, before that I was doing food trading. I was a food broker basically, and it was a very transactional business, and we did well. I mean, we made good money, but I very quickly figured out it was very transactional, that it was not really a business that was gonna. It required us to be there day in and day out and transacting and buying and selling to really make money, right? And that's how I got interested in real estate, the whole passive income side of it, where rents are going to continue, they'll continue paying your rent, and you just acquire more properties, and it doesn't require that. It's not as transactional, right, as food brokering was.
No, absolutely. And it's just like, I find it, I too, I've been I don't know how you discovered being an LP, a limited partner investor in deals, but it's just, it's like, I too fully believe in syndications as well. I'm in many of them. Some of them are multifamily space, and it's just I'm curious because you actually got it started in syndications even before I did. How did you even learn about it? Like, because was it around did you start in syndications as an LP investor like about 10 years ago?
Right.
Well, how did you even start knowing about that? For me, it was in the last 5 years.
For me, it was about 10 years ago. So I met a friend who was already investing in syndications and in just private in investments. Yep. And he's a friend that lives here in Miami. And this was back in 20, I think it was 2013. I want to say that the Jobs Act passed, where the rules became a lot more flexible. The SEC rules in general became more flexible, where they can advertise and whatnot. So I think that was the start of where a lot more people had access to this, where before that, a lot of it had to be done at the country club, quote unquote, or at the kind of like just relationships. After that, after the Jobs Act, that's where it was allowed to advertise depending on the syndication you're doing, right? And the exemption you're using. Well, now you can advertise, and now the word's out, and now you can post it on social media and send emails and whatnot. So it gave access to a lot more people. And during that time is where, when I, through a friend, right, who had a great experience, he introduced me to a sponsor he was investing in with, and that's, yeah. But in short, it was basically moving on from I was doing well on my food brokering, and I was trying to see what can I do with my money, how can I make money with my money and not have to transact as much.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. And I know that, I'm going to ask it this way, like how long did it take you from you being, from an LP to becoming a GP? Was that transition rather fast?
About 5 years. But also, if you consider my development work with GP as well, I mean, we didn't really have investors when we were doing our development work. It was mostly the partners who invested. But that was even before the LP, before my first LP, the real estate development, right? That did start about 10 years ago as well. So in 2012, I must have started developing, and in 2013 is when I started doing LP investments. Okay,
then that makes sense. And then how did you become it? This is a question for myself, as I potentially will transition also to become a GP, is like, how did you initially become a GP? How did that work?
So there was a sponsor I had been investing with for some time, right? And an operator who I actually still invest with him today, with his company and his team. And at the time I asked him, I asked, how can I be more involved, and how can I be on the GP side, on the manager side? I want to learn more. I want to be involved. I want to be a part of the team. And I got involved in the asset management and in sourcing funds for that bridge gap between when you're under contract and when you close. I started sourcing funds for that part, not necessarily raising funds for the deal. But eventually I started being more on the capital raising side and continue being on the asset management side of the deals. But the short answer to your question, and what I would encourage many to do, is invest with an operator that you know, like, and trust, and try 1 or 2 deals. And on the 3rd or 4th deal, ask. And there's a lot of different hats you can wear in a syndication or in a real estate operation, right? And if you ask, we all need the help, right? We all have an area where we can use help. So there's a good chance that they'll say, after you've invested for some time and they know you, and there's a good chance that there'll be some area where you can add value.
Yeah, it sounds like you brought in a complementary skill set, to the table with these guys. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So I at the time I had more time than they did too. There's a lot of work, right, involved in this business. There's, in my opinion, there's 3 main sides to it: for deal sourcing, capital raising, and managing the asset. Mm-hmm. Not in that particular order, right? Because the 3 of them are extremely important. And I would probably say that asset management is the most underrated one and the most important one too. Because you can have the worst deal, but if you operate it well, you may be okay. But if you have a great deal and you operate it bad, you're not going to be okay. You're probably not going to do well. So the asset management in general is key, and that's an area that I try to get involved as much as I can. And I'm typically, on most deals I'm a GP on, I'm pretty involved on the asset management side. Yeah. I'm on all the weekly calls. I do quarterly with store properties and all that stuff. So yeah.
Yep. Right now in your current business and whatnot, do you have a lot of, like, what's your team like? Do you have folks that manage like different parts in that? Are you doing pretty much a lot of that yourself, or what does that look like?
So I do the asset management. I do myself. I'm on the weekly calls. And now with that said, I have partners, right? So depending on the deal, I'm more specialized on the Oklahoma deals and the Charleston deals. Okay. On the other deals, my partners are more on the asset management side. Okay. But yeah.
Cool. A question for you, like for your properties and in multifamily deals and whatnot, how are you picking your areas?
So there's 3 main areas I invest in and buy in, at least on the active side. On the passive side, I invest with other operators too. I still do to diversify. But there's 3 general areas that I invest in: Georgia, or the Atlanta MSA, Charleston, also the Charleston MSA, and Oklahoma City. Those are the 3 areas that I'm pretty focused on. Someone once told me, so one of the things that's pretty important in real estate is to have that local knowledge, or that local feel, boots on the ground, they call it, however you want to call it. And someone once told me that boots on the ground does not necessarily mean a partner that lives there, but maybe someone and trust, like a family member maybe lives in that city, or where there's a good friend that lives in that city. And even if they're not involved in the business, just having someone local that you can rely on, and you can maybe call them and ask them, what do you think of this address? Is it a safe area? Is it not? They're going to have that local feel. So I've leveraged that, right? It's hard to focus on a single area if you want to really buy many assets. There's limited amount of depending on the properties, right? But if you go into multifamily, into larger multifamily, there's going to be limited amount of properties that you can buy in a single area, especially in this competitive market. So I always start by finding a place where I have some sort of local knowledge or access to, either a family member, friend, as I was saying. And then I look at the demographics, it has to check all the boxes, where there's job growth, there has to be household growth, which is going to be tied to the job growth usually. And I like to polish the side. I like to invest in landlord friendly states. That's why, as you can see, I'm in Oklahoma, I'm in Georgia, and I'm in South Carolina. And just diversified employers. I don't like to go to places where there's just one employer, or maybe there's just one industry. I like areas where there's different industries, different sources of income, a diversified economy in general. And job growth is extremely important. Crime rate has to be low, stuff like that.
Okay. I know that most of the projects that you're doing right now, your syndication business is all multifamily, right? What's a typical type of property that you guys go for? What unit size, what price points, and whatnot? And what are your what are kind of your hold times?
Okay, so we buy anything from we try to stay over 50 units and sometimes even over 100 units. But recently, with the competitive market, we found a lot of success on the smaller properties, on the 30, 40 unit size deals, just because we tend to be the better qualified buyer at that size. There's not many people, there's not as many buyers looking at those right now. So, and our strategy recently has been to build up portfolios of smaller 20, 30 unit properties and eventually sell them as one 80, 90 unit building. We try to focus on B and some C class properties. Whole time 5 to 7 years. Now we've extended it a little just in case, because with the rising interest rate environment and all that, we just like to set expectations that we may have to hold on to the properties a little longer than expected or before. We've had very good years, past 10 or 8, 7 years. They've been great years. And everyone was projecting 5, 6 year holds, and everyone was exiting in year 2. Going forward, that may continue to happen, but we're not going to bet on that. So we're projecting 5 to 7 year holds. Sometimes more on the 7 year hold side recently. And
speaking of setting expectations potentially for longer holds, I mean, on the underwriting side of things, when you're looking at deals, I mean, what about like preparing for a downturn in the event that there is one? Like, are you doing anything different now on the underwriting side of things when you're looking at deals that perhaps compared to perhaps like a year or two ago?
So yeah, there's in general, I'm trying to go in better capitalized than before, but just with higher reserves and whatnot. I'm not of the thought that we're going to encounter a recession. We may, right? We have to be prepared, but I'm not thinking that the recession is going to happen tomorrow. It's going to happen at some point, but we just don't know when. So I think that it being on the sidelines is not necessarily the best strategy. I mean, for some people it may be, but not for us at least. We don't think it's the best strategy just because we don't know. I mean, things may keep on going up. We used to think we were at the top of the market 3 years ago, right? Or 4, or even 5 years ago, we thought we were at the top of the market. So sitting on the sidelines can also be risky, right? Especially when in an environment with inflation and rising interest rates and whatnot. There's also risks to sitting on the sidelines. But going back to your question of underwriting, we're being more conservative with rent growth. We're also taking into account inflation for our expenses. We're not, whereas before we used to maybe grab the seller's expenses and kind of adjust those to what we thought our expenses were and maybe add just 2 or 3%. Now we're adding 10% in some cases, depending on the property to what the seller's pro forma or not pro forma teach all the same, right? So yeah, just that, not being as aggressive with rent growth, especially after year 2 and 3, right? I can see a case for rent growth being strong in 2022, and possibly even 2023 and going forward, who knows? But we're not underwriting strong rent growth past 2023.
Yep. And I take it like pretty much all your deals are value add plays. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, we do. They're not heavy lifts where we're going to have to remodel the whole property. Most of it is just going to be cosmetic interiors. In some cases, we may look at properties where maybe 5 units have been turned or remodeled with heavier upgrades, where maybe the upgrades are, I don't know, $10,000 a unit. New countertops, new kitchen, new flooring, PVC flooring, or whatnot. They're all going to have some sort of value add.
Yep.
And value add is not always going to be on improvements or physical improvements. It can also be on the operational side, right? Or adding rubs or other sorts of income. There's all sorts of things you can do.
We're in real estate and nothing ever goes as planned, exactly or whatnot. I wanted to ask you, are there any stories that jump out at you, any experiences where something didn't go as planned or whatnot? And, like on any of these value add types of deals and whatnot, where you learn something from it. And, is there anything you can share related to that?
Yeah. There's been a few. I'll share. I guess the most significant one has been in development.
Yeah,
definitely. There's always going to be, there's a lot of things you control, right? But there's a lot of things you don't control. And no matter how well prepared you are or not prepared, how well you execute, there's going to always be things outside your control that may show up. And those are the things you really have to prepare for.
Yep.
In my case, I was developing properties in Nicaragua, right? Different residential properties. And we had a pretty bad socio-economic political crisis in 2018 that really, it like the lending dried up from one day to the other. It's kind of like a feeling similar to what we had during March of 2020 here in the US, right? Where nobody knew what was going to happen.
Right.
Well, we had that, but for a longer period of time, right? So that experience was interesting, and it really gave us tough skin. So our buyers needed financing, right? There was no financing in the country. We couldn't even fly. I mean, everything, the country had collapsed. Everyone was striking. Everything was, and that takes me back to my point of Latin America versus the US. I mean, yeah, we have, we may have issues in the US too, but you can't even start to compare. Like this is like, there's a lot of other issues that uncomparable, right? So for us, that meant we had to hold on to the last, I think it must've been 10 properties that we had at that development that we hadn't sold. We had to hold on for those for about 3 years. It took us to sell them more than expected, right? Because we were already finishing off our project, and we were supposed to exit 2 or 3 months after that event happened, and we ended up holding the properties for 3 years. The good part is we came out well, relatively well, right, unharmed, and we didn't lose money, but it was definitely, the whole time was a lot longer than expected, and the impact it had to the project was significant.
Excellent. I know you right now in terms of raising money and whatnot, how are you finding your investors right now? Is it networking, friends, family, or what's the best ways you're finding to raise money?
So both. A lot of friends and family, and networking a lot. Definitely networking is key. I've been in Miami. There's a lot of people from Latin America that either visit here or live here, right? There's a huge Latin American community from different countries, and they're here for different reasons, right? A lot of them are here because they've had bad experiences in their country, and they've moved here. Some others are here on vacation, right? But one thing I've found in common is that there's a lot of interest to invest in real estate from Latin America to the US, just because we don't really have, in general in Latin America, the concept of commercial real estate, right? Multifamily, that you may see a little bit of it in Chile, you may see a little bit of it in Mexico, but in the rest of Latin America, you're not really going to see it, at least not the way we see it here. You'll have condo buildings, but not a whole building for rent. I mean, very little, right? So going back to the investors, there's for different reasons, there's been a pretty interesting flood of capital from Latin America to the US. And I've been invited to a couple of conferences here in Miami to speak. And I go and talk about multifamily and real estate investing in Spanish, right? Which is there's not many operators that speak Spanish, work in this industry. Yeah. So
absolutely. I don't think I know. Yeah. I barely know any myself.
Yeah. So yeah, I've met a lot of investors at those conferences by talking to them in their language, and having similar cultures and whatnot.
And a lot of times as well, like, they're probably even brand new to the idea of investing via syndication. And so you go through that process of getting them comfortable, of explaining how that all works. Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. How do you do that? I mean, what's your education process like for somebody brand new to investing in a multifamily syndication to get them to the point where, they're comfortable pulling the trigger?
So my experience with these foreign investors has mostly been that it's not going to make sense for them to, or it's going to be a lot easier for them to invest if they write a larger check, just because there's going to be tax and legal implications, right? So, and the cost of investing $50,000 is going to be very similar to the tax and legal cost of investing $1 million, right? Yep. So the ones that tend to invest are the larger check writers, or they just tend to write a larger check if they can, right? If they have the funds to do it. With that, the profile of investor that I've encountered is a little bit more sophisticated. Mm-hmm. So the way I have to talk to them is you have to know who you're talking to. You have to know your audience, and they don't really know U.S. multifamily, right? Because it may be something new to them.
It's a foreign concept. Yeah.
Right. Correct. But they are sophisticated and they understand numbers. They understand, this is not, it's not your typical investor in a syndication where I want passive income and that's it, right? It's not the financial freedom passive income concept. This is more small family offices trying to, just imagine who writes $1 million check. They're going to be a little bit more, they're going to know a little bit more how to analyze your performance and whatnot. So it's more about making them feel comfortable on how we're mitigating the risk and how and where the opportunity lies. Yeah. Yep.
Okay, that makes sense to me. I mean, they're more financially savvy than somebody that's going to potentially invest just $50,000 as a first-time LP investor. I get what you're saying. So you're able to get them more comfortable about it all. What do you think? What do you see? Like, what are the challenges right now in your space, in the multifamily space? Are there anything right now, or do you see stuff like, are there things that that you're just kind of keep being cognizant of?
So there's two main challenges right now that I see. One is the competitive market, which is a lot of it's hard to find a deal, right? Yep. And absolutely. There's a lot of people that may be overpaying. At least that's what we think. We may be wrong. We may in 5 years say that they weren't overpaying, but today we think it seems like they're overpaying. And rising interest rates. That's, those are the two challenges. Yep. The solution, at least for us, has been just put in more offers, underwrite more, and just look at more deals, right? That's been on the deal sourcing side of things. Right now, we have to probably, for every deal we used to underwrite before, 2-3 years ago, now we have to underwrite 2. So we're probably looking at twice as many deals, and getting less contracts. And for interest rates, you just have to make sure if you're projecting a refi or something, which we're trying to stay away from on the new deals. We're trying not to do deals with refinances, but if you are, you really have to make sure that that interest rate you're pulling up in 2 or 3 years is high enough, because we don't know where they're going to be, and they may be higher. You can't underwrite today a refi in 2 years at 4%, right? At least for the deals we do, you have to go above 5 probably.
Yep, all makes sense to me. Some final questions for you. It's like, first one, what are you excited about in your business right now?
Yeah, so I'm excited about continuing to grow my Latin American investor base. So that what I was talking about with my investors from Latin America, that's relatively new. I've been doing that for about a year. Yep. And I'm really excited about growing that and bringing content to them in Spanish and formalizing that side, right? And a lot of it has been organic, and now I want to make it more formal.
Okay, very good. And next question: any big goals that you're working on in this year, either personal or business?
Yeah, so selling I have a small portfolio of single family homes and a couple duplexes and stuff like that. And I'm starting to sell those off one by one. And after this year, I should have only a couple left. So that's something one goal. And the other goal, which I already mentioned, is just bringing content to investors from Latin America in Spanish. There aren't many operators catering to them. And my goal is to really, give them the space and the opportunity to invest in this space.
Very cool. And what does success mean to you?
On the personal side, definitely family and being present, being with them, being there for them, and just being present. Being present is more important than anything else. And on the business side, making my investors happy. It's definitely all about the investors. It's all about them. It's their money.
Absolutely. And what's your superpower that's contributed to your all your success so far?
So interestingly, I'm introverted, but my superpower is networking, regardless of me being introverted, and just bringing together the different cultures. As I was talking before, just bringing together the culture in the U.S. with the culture in Latin America.
Yeah, but Bernard, I could completely relate. I'm introverted as well by nature. It's like I do all this networking myself and just I run a business and whatnot. You gotta do it, but it's you stretch yourself, right? It's like how you just get yourself to the next level. And lastly, how can somebody get a hold of you?
I'm on all the social medias, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram. You look me up, Bernard Pierson, or send me an email. My email is bpearson, BPIERSON, @Equity Partners, equity with an I at the end for international. So it's EQUIPI partners.com.
Very, very, very cool. Well, that's the wrap, folks. That's all the time we have for today. Thanks, Bernard, for joining me on this episode. Thanks for sharing your story and your real estate journey, your knowledge with us. I found it very inspiring. And I wish you all the success as you continue to scale your business and your portfolio. And can't wait to meet you at a future GoBundance event, by the way. And
definitely.
Yeah, definitely. To my listeners, thanks. Feel free to reach out to Bernard directly if you have any questions for him. And thank you for checking out this episode of the School of Cash Flow. Remember to leave me a podcast review on iTunes, as it helps me attract even more great guests like Bernard. So until next time, live a life abundantly.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the School of Cash Flow. We hope you enjoyed our deep dive into all the tips and tricks you can use to help you on your passive investing journey. In the meantime, you may visit www.cashflowschoolpodcast.com for more great episodes. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, review, and share. That's all for this episode, folks. See you next time.